The history of this place starts in the year 1900, where we meet Sir Kellie Smith. He was a Scottish planter who arrived in Perak, British Malaya, during the height of the rubber boom. And he did so with big dreams of building a legacy for himself. And in order to do that, he purchased 600 acres of land here in the jungle. This area used to be part of a larger kingdom called the Sultanate of Gaja, but the land was given out by the British colonial government as a reward for the services rendered during the conquest. Kellie bought the land in the name of his wife, Lady Agnes, and together they set out to build their dream home right here amidst the trees in the middle of nowhere. It was supposed to be an Indo-Moorish-style palace, filled with all the luxuries that the modern conveniences could provide at the time. However, the construction of the house quickly revealed its own difficulties. The steep terrain demanded a lot of manual labor. There were frequent downpours, which made the ground slippery and dangerous. And there were also wild animals like elephants and tigers that would come close to the settlement and eat the dogs. On top of this, the locals from the Orang Osley tribe warned them that this was an unhealthy location, since it was an old burial ground. Despite these warnings, the construction continued. But after Lady Agnes had her 2 children here, she never felt comfortable living on the land, and left most of the time to go back to Scotland. Sir Kellie died in 1906 of pneumonia at the age of 56, and the castle was never finished. The entire project was abandoned, and is today known as Kellie's Castle. Most of what you see here are just bare concrete walls and corridors, and some rooms have collapsed completely. Now, in my previous video about this place, many people pointed out that this is probably the best example of Indo-Saracenic architecture ever seen outside of India. To be honest, I think the same. The design is just too perfect to be left half-finished. But it's important to understand the context behind this structure, because without that you won't be able to fully appreciate why it was built in the first place. Kellie wanted to build an empire here, something bigger than himself, and in his mind, that meant making his mark with a monumental structure that would be the center of attention. In fact, there was even a plan to install the world's first passenger elevator here, which was apparently going to be powered by a steam engine. The idea was that guests would enter the lift at the bottom, and while they rode up, they would be surrounded by glass windows that showcase artifacts from different cultures that Kellie had collected throughout his travels. Unfortunately, this was never completed either. I actually found a real plaque embedded into the wall with the original text that says, "This is Malaya's first intended elevator, architecturally designed in an Indo-Moorish blend." What's really interesting is how the British colonial government allowed private individuals like Kellie to exploit the resources of the country, as long as they brought in foreign expertise and labor to develop the infrastructure. At the time, the population of Malaya was mostly indigenous people, and there weren't enough skilled workers to support such a huge construction project. So Kellie imported builders and engineers from India, China, and other parts of Europe, and those people lived in settlements near the construction sites. That is how the various communities came to be in this part of the world. All of this happened within a span of about 30 years before World War I broke out and put an end to the colonial era. After Kellie died, the house was sold to another company. They tried to use it as a tin mine office, but that didn't work out either. And since then, it's been empty for more than 100 years. As for Lady Agnes, she spent a lot of time in the house painting the walls of her children's nursery with beautiful spirals. She poured all her love and energy into creating a safe space for her babies, but she never got to see them grow up here. When she eventually packed up and left, she painted similar spirals on the wooden crates that held her belongings. Even though the castle is very popular among tourists, not much has changed. It still looks exactly the same. The only difference is that there are now more trees and vegetation growing around it. The walls are covered in moss and roots, and occasionally you can find wild ginger plants growing in between the cracks. There are several tunnels leading in and out of the house, and many of them are collapsing as the soil erodes. It feels like time itself is trying to reclaim everything that was lost here. Now, the history of Kellie's castle is just one story in a series of events that shaped our modern world. However, it's a story that wouldn't have been possible without the contribution of many others. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you can take a moment to show your support. It will really help spread awareness about these hidden places and forgotten histories. Now let's get back to the story. In the year 2025, we meet Iris Kellie Boster, a young woman from Ireland who claims to be a direct descendant of Sir Kellie. She works as a curator in an art gallery in Edinburgh, and she's currently planning a new exhibition featuring objects from her family's collection. As she prepares for the show, she receives a voice note from her late grandmother, Helen, who gave her a pendant with an inscription that reads, "Where the rivers sleep and the mountains weep." Iris decides to visit the place from the voice note and finds herself at Kellie's castle. Throughout her stay here, she meets a local guide named Pac Rimba and learns about the history of the place from him. Later, she goes into the ruined nursery and discovers a journal belonging to Lady Agnes. As she sits down to read it, she becomes overwhelmed with emotion and begins to cry. That's when she notices the spiral patterns painted on the walls and realizes that she is connected to this place by blood. She spends the night here alone and writes down her thoughts in the margins of the journal. Then she leaves the next morning without anyone knowing that she had been here. Back in Edinburgh, Iris continues to research her family's history and prepares to unveil her findings at the exhibition. She creates installations of the spirals and decorates the room with wild ginger scent to recreate the atmosphere of the castle. She also brings in the journal and some of the old photographs to share the stories with everyone who visits. Furthermore, she prepares a special corner with an ASMR soundscape of dripping water and whispering voices in the background. People walk around barefoot to enhance the experience. And in the last room, she places her grandmother's pendant on top of a cradle as if waiting for someone to be born. All of these elements come together to form a cohesive narrative that puts Kellie's castle on display for the whole world to see. The exhibition becomes a huge success, and everyone who enters the space is deeply moved by the personal touch that Iris brought to the presentation. As the crowd begins to leave, we hear a soft whisper coming from the cradle, followed by the glow of the pendant. Then everything fades to black. The next day, Iris comes back to the gallery and finds out that the pendant is glowing again. She follows the signal and ends up at the foot of the spiral staircase at Kellie's castle. It's nighttime, and there's no one else around. She walks up the stairs and encounters a spirit child wearing a Victorian nightgown. The two embrace each other and the child disappears. Iris then returns to the castle several weeks later and performs a ritual around the moonlit spiral. She calls out, "Do you remember me?" And a spirit appears behind her, glowing faintly. Iris thanks the spirit for returning and bids farewell. Then she turns around and walks away slowly. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.